welcome to the innovation stage. This conversation is going to be about Bitcoin as a cultural layer and how we can actually talk about the Bitcoin core values in a context of culture and in a way that it's more relevant for real people, for people who actually want to build a legacy, for people who actually want to build technology, and not only for financial exchange. So we came up with this concept, timeless, because usually when we talk about immutability, it is pretty complex and it doesn't speak to retail. And when we consider Bitcoin, when it came out as a peer-to-peer cash system, right now we are basically using Bitcoin, everything else than cash. And it's turned into an asset pretty quickly, 15 plus years. And we are talking now about Bitcoin as if it's a gold. And this similarity is following a culturally important historicity, basically. The problem Bitcoin solves, double spending, which is a pretty complex financial term, when it does that, it introduces the digital scarcity to the world of finance and technology. So this digital scarcity and also the authenticity is basically right now $100,000 per unit. But it is not cash. When we talk about the Bitcoin as a network, as an infrastructure, we talk about this neutral base layer where we store value, identity, and we refer to permanence. Permanence is something that is really important for us mortals. It's been ages when we actually try to invent ways to make things permanent for ourselves. And the value is actually stored by the durability concept. And the centralization and the control and all these fragile concepts in finance now turned into a total new layer with the introduction of decentralized money. But there's something really important, self-sovereignty. Every entrepreneur's life starts with the concept of sovereignty. We seek autonomy, we seek independence. And when you start this journey, you are basically in need of capital, you are in need of branding, you are in need of resources, and everything basically. But entrepreneurship essentially, especially in tech, is a journey of sovereignty. And it is basically the core essential step to get to where you want to go. And when we talk about crypto as a tradable asset, we usually forget that it's actually a fundraising methodology for startups that allows founders and the tech owners not to give up on equity and the ownership of their tech. And it's basically innovation on the tech ownership and for the entrepreneur's own journey towards sovereignty. Then, when you have your own capitals and your startup is going well, and in your journey you made a name for yourself, then you want to achieve things and you want to come together with those who share the same values. And then it means we are seeking for community. And these are the pillars of S21. We started as a community. It was my journey towards sovereignty with Bitcoin ownership. I'm early in Bitcoin, and which then turned into sovereignty. And then seeking the community of similar-minded people and the same value holders is basically what allows us to build things that is greater than ourselves. And that's the community aspect, which is a very underrated aspect, because crypto is essentially operate on community of miners, community of entrepreneurs, and community of holders. This is what crypto is bringing together. Then there is something that is mostly speaks only to a few: legacy. Legacy is basically what we want to leave behind after our mortal lives. And there comes the concept of permanence, because legacy is only possible after the sovereignty and community steps. And sovereignty, community, legacy is where we right now operate with as S21. This is also my journey to bring these values to Turkey for the first time after 5 years in Asia. And with these values, we are trying to support startups and the other initiatives. When we talk about decentralization, it looks like exactly like this. And it looks super chaotic as opposed to that representation of centralization. And the decentralization is basically very easily to represent in this picture. Every node speaking to each other, everyone engaging with each other, as opposed to the centralized version, you usually are mediated by the central node. And you can think about it as the community or your business model. When you're building a business model, it's basically the community-oriented business model means exactly this. If you can make people, holders, investors, creators, builders engage with each other, that's a community-oriented business model, and that's what crypto makes possible. Otherwise, they're always mediated by the central company, central capital owner, and central entity that is your brand, that is your Instagram page, that is your LinkedIn profile, but the community is basically in Web3, where each node interacts freely with each other without the mediation of your product or your brand. But what happened is basically, this is a narrative from Marxism, basically. And it's interesting because usually we don't talk about the financial theory or the political philosophy in a crypto conference, but we have to, because that's basically the innovation happens. The crypto innovates with these concepts where all the social the theories actually left. This is the only thing that is really transforming the financial and the technological game. So Marxist feminists have this critique to Marx and Engels, that they envisioned value as only financial. And they introduced the notion of a non-financial value. And you can talk about the other sort of art, labor, and household work, and the reimagination of value as a non-financial surplus basically allowed the Marxist feminists to structure a new form of society where culture, art, and other relations actually are included in the economic exchange and that narrative. And here is the main argument S21 wants to bring to the startups in its ecosystem, basically. The non-financial value. So we built tools for capital. Now we want to build mythologies that make them matter. And this is the main argument that I want to present you today. Why Bitcoin is relevant as an asset is $100,000+, but it is an infrastructure that allows us to maybe rethink the question of what do we want to maintain? What do we want to persist? As a humanities cultural, neutral and cultural layer, what do we want to put on chain? And this is basically what the probably the crypto space needs this cultural value layer. That's what we call the cultural blind spot in crypto, because we're talking about all these assets, but we sometimes ignore the core essential blockchain native values that all this industry is built on. And I always try to insinuate that blockchain is an ideological invention. If you're not so much worried about how things work in a centralized way, and if you don't have any issues with how things work, then you cannot innovate in a way that it turns into an asset that is $100,000. And Satoshi did. That's why we are inspired by Satoshi, and the name comes from that ideology. We want to build ideologically relevant products. So economic infrastructure is there, and crypto is usually focused on the capital, yield, speculation, and the markets. But we need myth makers. We need the artist. We need the cultural layer for Bitcoin, because it's evolving, but there's a huge gap between the two worlds. The actual cultural relevant creators and the whole crypto world that owns the means to make any change. And this is important, especially in this country, because we are talking about sovereignty and all these relevant concepts, which is very tricky to preserve in its best form with our traditional ways. So what we are experimenting with right now in S21 is like two concepts. One is timeless, the other one is the blacklist. S21 blacklist, I want to start, is the capital side. So we are basically bringing, instead of a VC model type of like togetherness, we are basically bringing everyone that we invest together into a 21 nodes of small DAO, because DAOs had this beautiful idea to bring an organization together and distribute the decision-making incentives, but then it collapsed because no one had enough incentive to participate in the decision-making. And few worked. One of them is Ethereum, actually, because it's super relevant. Maybe you can even say the Bitcoin was the first DAO, because it is an actual governance layer as well. But it is not really out there as a form of, as a form we can actually use. But keeping it niche, keeping it small, and that's what we are doing with 21 investor nodes of our angel network, bringing these people together around meaningful products, building our own decentralized boardroom. And that's the S21 Blacklist DAO. And Timeless is basically the concept that we are launching on Friday in Soho House with a private event with the participation of the galleries, collectors, artists from Turkey and abroad, and Ordinals Boat Trio in partnership with the Ordinals Boats Launchpad, and basically bringing art and other culturally relevant assets on-chain, on Bitcoin, using it as the gold that we can make jewelry with our own moments. And the Timeless, basically, the concept we are going to try in then Hong Kong and New York, and this is where we want to build the culturally relevant community that's going to be coming to Bitcoin and crypto world, basically. That day, we are basically going to capture the moments by a photographer, artist of the participants, and it's going to be the first commemorative collection. This collection is going to be on-chain, on Bitcoin, from that moment, of that shared moments, and that's basically going to create another type of DAO, like with the participation and the moments we want to preserve. So as a quick note of what we are doing in S21, based on these pillars, as a venture studio, it's been 5 years S21 has been around. We started as a community. It was the community after my own sovereign journey. We started in Indonesia, Bali, because of the pandemic, where I got stuck initially. And then I quickly realized it was the time where so many other Bitcoin OGs were also there, including MetaMask founder, Coinbase C-levels, and many local and global exchange founders and C-levels. And the community then turned into our playground. We helped each other, and with the consultancy, S21 Ventures now with the S21 Blacklist, and now we have S21 Labs. We create products that we think is culturally and also ideologically relevant to bring on chain, and then the S21 Creative Studio, because we want to build the relevant brands and the relevant communities to make the projects we bring on chain relevant and as strong as possible, and make sure they are there in the long term and more than a couple of months after the fundraising. Thank you, and hopefully we will have more understanding of the Bitcoin as a cultural layer in the future, and thank you so much. I can have questions after the talk.